What if Rimuru returned to the beginning as a god? Rimuru Tempest, now at the absolute pinnacle of his power, stands as the revered leader of the Jura Tempest Federation. He has seen it all: triumph and heartbreak, loyalty and betrayal, the rise of his nation, and the tragic price of war. But what if he could do it all over again? Seal performs an unprecedented feat, sending Rimuru's consciousness back to the very moment of his reincarnation. This isn't a second chance, it's a new game plus. Armed with the wisdom of a god-tier being, the memories of a fulfilled future, and the power of a true dragon, Rimuru must navigate the pitfalls he once faced as a naive, newly reborn slime. This time, he won't be caught off guard by the schemes of Falmouth, Clayman, or the complex political machinations of the world. With his foreknowledge, Rimuru is determined to build a true paradise, a nation where no friend is lost and no sacrifice is in vain. But even with his immense power and knowledge, the past isn't so easily rewritten. New variables and unforeseen challenges await. Can Rimuru truly create a perfect world, or will the weight of his own godhood and the very nature of time itself create a different, darker path? The sensation was familiar, yet utterly different. Not the jarring confusion of a sudden death and rebirth, but the serene calm of a deliberate return. Rimuru Tempest, the chaos creator, the great demon lord, the ultimate being, found himself once more in the form of a humble slime. The cool, damp stone of the great forest of Jurasei. Alad cave pressed against his gelatinous body, a sensation he hadn't truly felt in millennia. This is it, then. His internal voice, clear and unburdened by the usual complexities of his empire, Resina. Ted with a profound sense of anticipation. Master, the system initialization is complete. All memories and skills from the previous timeline are perfectly integrated. Commencing power sealing as per your request. The voice, crisp and utterly devoted, belonged to Mana's seal. She was not a separate entity speaking aloud, but an omnipresent, omniscient extension of his very being, her thoughts flowing seamlessly with his own. Her excitement, a subtle hum in his consciousness, was palpable. This was their grand experiment, their new game plus. A vast, unimaginable ocean of power, the very essence of his multiversal existence, began to recede. It wasn't a loss, but a controlled containment. Seal, with surgical precision, compressed it, layer by layer, into a dormant core deep within his soul. The sensation was akin to an infinite cosmos collapsing into a single, perfectly ordered singularity. He felt the raw, destructive energy of Turn Null, the boundless reach of Void God Azathoth, the countless perfected skills he had accumulated, all being meticulously tucked away. Power sealed to a stable output equivalent to a newly awakened true dragon, Master. All higher functions and reality-bending abilities are locked. Only core skills and basic evolutions will manifest naturally, unless specific, controlled bursts are authorized. CL's internal report was instantaneous and flawless. Rimuru mentally nodded. This was precisely the plan. To re-experience the journey, to build his nation with foresight and finesse, without simply obliterating every challenge with his overwhelming might. The fun was in the optimization, the subtle nudges, the refined leadership. He slithered forward, the familiar dimness of the cave stretching before him. Even the air felt new again, despite his memories of its countless iterations. He was heading towards a familiar presence, a colossal aura of storm and rage that had once been his first friend. Veldora, Rimuru thought, a faint ripple of amusement passing through his slime body. Let's see how much more cultured you can become this time. He found the storm dragon exactly where he remembered him, chained by the infinite imprisonment. Veldora's aura flared with frustration and boredom, just as it always had. Oh, a lowly slime, what brings you into my sealed domain? Veldora's booming voice echoed, filled with the usual mix of arrogance and loneliness. Rimuru formed a small, confident ripple. Greetings, Storm Dragon Veldora. I am Rimuru, and I've come to offer you something far more interesting than your prison. Veldora scoffed. And what could a mere slime offer a mighty true dragon? Knowledge, Rimuru replied, his internal voice calm and steady, even as Seal prepared the data. Knowledge of worlds beyond this one. Tales of heroes, villains, and adventures that will make your 300 years of solitude feel like a blink. Before Veldora could retort, Rimuru extended a small, transparent pseudopod. Within it, a perfectly rendered, glowing image materialized, the cover of a popular shonen manga. The artwork was vibrant, depicting a determined hero facing a monstrous foe. Veldora's eyes, usually narrowed in boredom, widened almost imperceptibly. What is this? It's called manga, Rimuru explained, the concept flowing directly into Veldora's mind. Stories, drawn and told in sequence. I have an entire library of them. And if you're willing to be my friend, I can share them with you. And perhaps, I can even help you break that seal. The offer was audacious, but Rimuru's calm confidence, coupled with the sheer novelty of the manga, captivated the ancient dragon. Veldora, after a moment of internal struggle, let out a booming laugh. Kuahahaha, a slime offers me friendship and stories. Very well, little one. I accept, but if these, manga, bore me, you shall face my wrath. Excellent, Rimuru thought, a genuine smile forming on his non-existent face. Then, Veldora, I'll need to absorb you for a while to analyze that seal. Don't worry, you'll have plenty of reading material inside. Veldora, surprisingly compliant, allowed himself to be consumed. The sensation of his massive form entering Rimuru's imaginary space was familiar. But this time, Rimuru felt the subtle, instantaneous optimization by seal. The analysis of the infinite imprisonment began at an unprecedented speed, and Veldora's internal environment was immediately tailored for maximum comfort and manga immersion. Analysis of infinite imprisonment commencing at 1,000,000x normal speed. Veldora's consciousness stable within imaginary space. Manga library accessible. Estimated time for complete seal analysis, negligible. Seal reported. This is going to be so much more efficient, Rimuru mused. Within the vastness of Rimuru's imaginary space, Veldora, now able to manifest a stable, albeit ethereal, form, found himself surrounded by shelves of luminous books. He immediately grabbed one, his eyes glued to the first panel. As he devoured chapter after chapter, a strange sensation began to prick at the edges of his draconic mind. The speed at which Rimuru was analyzing his seal was impossible. The seamless flow of the manga, tailored precisely to his tastes, felt almost too perfect. He sensed an underlying, unfathomable intelligence at work, an unseen hand guiding Rimuru's every action with flawless precision. Is this the voice of the world? Or something even more profound? Veldora wondered, a flicker of awe and curiosity replacing his usual boredom. This slime, he's truly something else. He shook his head, dismissing the thought for now, and plunged back into the thrilling world of shonen battles. Rimuru, feeling Veldora's internal musings, allowed himself a small, private chuckle. Just a glimpse, Veldora. Just enough to pique your interest. He then turned his attention to the next crucial step. He would soon leave the cave. And then, he would meet Shizu. This time, her tragic fate would be averted, not by a desperate intervention, but by a carefully planned rescue and a unique mentorship. All right, seal, Rimuru thought, his resolve firm. Time to prepare for Shizu-san. Let's make sure her new life is truly wonderful. The journey had just begun, but for Rimuru, it was already a masterpiece in the making. Having secured Veldora within the boundless expanse of his imaginary space, Rimuru felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The cave, once a prison for a mighty dragon and a place of his own rebirth, now felt like a mere stepping stone. He was ready. Master, external environment analysis complete. Probability of immediate high-threat encounters, low. Optimal path for resource acquisition and initial settlement identification calculated. Proceeding with cautious optimism is Rico. M mended for maintaining the illusion of natural progression. CL's internal voice was a soothing hum of efficiency, her excitement mirroring his own. Cautious optimism, Seal, you always were one for understatement, Rimuru mused. A ripple of amusement passing through his gelatinous form. He was, after all, an omnipotent being pretending to be a rapidly evolving slime. The illusion of natural progression was paramount. He slithered towards the cave's exit, the light from the outside world growing brighter. The air, crisp and fresh, filled his non-existent lungs. This world, so familiar yet brimming with renewed potential, stretched before him. His first encounters were precisely as he remembered, though his reactions were now tempered by millennia of experience. The small, terrified goblins, huddled together, their crude weapons trembling in their hands. They saw a monster, a threat. Rimuru, however, saw potential, loyalty, and the foundation of his future nation. He allowed them their initial fear, observing their reactions with a calm, analytical gaze. Ah, the classic, terrified villager, routine, Rimuru thought, a small, internal chuckle escaping him. Always a good starting point for a hero's journey. Even if I'm just here for the perfected design. Their leader, Rigurd, stepped forward, his voice quivering but resolute. Who goes there? Monster of the cave. State your purpose. Rimuru projected his thoughts. A gentle mental wave that conveyed understanding rather than intimidation. Greetings. He paused, letting the initial shock settle. My name is Rimuru. I mean you no harm. I merely seek to explore this forest. A collective gasp rippled through the goblin ranks. Their eyes, wide with a mixture of fear and dawning comprehension, fixed on the unassuming slime. A named monster. This was an anomaly, a sign of power and significance far beyond a common forest creature. Whispers broke out amongst them, hushed and awestruck. A name, it has a name. Who could have named it? Such a powerful being. Rigurd's trembling ceased, replaced by a new kind of reverence. For a monster to possess a name meant it had been acknowledged by a greater entity, or had evolved to a level of sentience rarely seen. The goblins exchanged nervous glances. Their fear was genuine, but Rimuru also sensed their desperation, their vulnerability to the encroaching direwolves. This was his cue. It seems you are troubled, Rimuru continued, his voice resonating with an unexpected wisdom. I sense a great threat approaching your village. Perhaps I can be of assistance. Rigurd, hesitant but desperate, explained their plight. The direwolves, led by a fearsome pack leader, had grown increasingly aggressive, threatening their very survival. Rimuru listened patiently, his internal processes seal already calculating optimal strategies, resource allocation, and the fastest path to establishing a defensible position. He wasn't just hearing their words, he was seeing the entire tactical landscape. The strengths and weaknesses of both sides, and the most efficient way to achieve a decisive, yet controlled, victory. I understand, Rimuru finally said, his voice carrying a calm authority. I will help you. In exchange, I ask for your loyalty and cooperation. Together, we can build a safe haven here. Rigurd, though desperate, hesitated. Loyalty to a monster, he stammered, glancing nervously at his trembling kin. We are but weak goblins. What could we offer in return for such aid? And what kind of safe haven could a single slime build against the might of the direwolves? Rimuru allowed a moment of silence, letting their fear and doubt hang in the air. A fair question, Rigurd. Good, they're thinking. Your loyalty is your strength, Elder, Rimuru projected, his voice firm but reassuring. And your cooperation will build a foundation far stronger than any individual might. As for what I can offer, I offer not just protection, but prosperity. A place where you will not merely survive, but thrive. Where your people will grow, learn, and become something greater than you can imagine. He paused, letting the promise sink in. The direwolves are a threat today, but with my guidance, they will be but a stepping stone to a future you can only dream of. The conviction in his voice, coupled with the sheer audacity of his promise, seemed to pierce through the goblins' fear. Rigurd looked at his people, then back at the calm, unwavering slime. The despair they felt was overwhelming, and this monster offered a glimmer of hope unlike any they had ever known. We accept, Rigurd finally declared, bowing deeply. His voice, though still shaky, held a newfound resolve. We pledge our loyalty to you, Rimuru-sama. The other goblins, seeing their elder's conviction, echoed his pledge. A chorus of hesitant but earnest vows. Rimuru felt a subtle shift in their connection, a nascent bond forming. Excellent, Rimuru thought, a deep satisfaction settling within him. Lead me to your village. We will fortify your defenses. And gather all available resources. We will need them. As they hurried through the forest, Rimuru observed his soon-to-be subordinates. He noted the young, energetic Gobta, the timid Gobzo, and the overall lack of combat experience. This was where his enlightened architect approach truly began. Upon reaching the crude goblin village, Rimuru gathered them. Now, listen closely, he projected, his voice resonating with a gentle power. To truly grow, to become stronger, you will need names. I will bestow them upon you. A.F. Rush wave of gasps and murmurs swept through the goblins, this time tinged with alarm. Rigurd, his eyes wide, stepped forward again. Rimuru-sama, forgive my insolence, but to name a monster, it consumes the namer's magicules. And to name so many it is unheard of. You, a named monster yourself, must surely understand the risk. We are not worth such a sacrifice. Another goblin, bolder than the rest, cried out. Are you trying to trick us, monster? To weaken yourself for some unknown purpose? Rimuru allowed their fear and confusion to play out, a small, internal smile forming. Good, they're thinking critically. This is progress. Silence, he projected, his voice firm but not harsh, instantly quelling the unrest. I understand your concerns. Indeed, naming consumes magicules. And yes, naming many is a great undertaking. He paused, letting his words sink in. But my nature is unique. My magical reserves are vast, and my ability to recover is unparalleled. You need not fear for my well-being. He didn't elaborate on who named him, maintaining that crucial secrecy. This is not a trick. This is a gift, a step towards the prosperity I promised. Do you trust me to lead you, or do you doubt my resolve? The goblins looked at each other, then back at the calm, confident slime. His words, though vague about his own power source, carried an undeniable truth, a conviction that resonated deep within their monster instincts. If he truly had such vast magicals, then perhaps this was possible. Rigurd, after a moment of profound contemplation, bowed deeply once more. We trust you, Rimuru-sama. We are ready. Quote, Master, optimal naming sequence and skill acquisition pathways for each individual goblin calculated. Suggesting immediate application to maximize initial evolutionary gains. Ciel's internal suggestion was precise. Of course, Ciel, you always did enjoy the character, or should I say evolution creation, phase. Rimuru didn't waste time. He immediately began the naming process. Unlike his original timeline, where he named them almost instinctively, this time each name was chosen with a specific, optimized outcome in mind, based on Ciel's perfect analysis of their potential. Rigurd, he began, his voice firm, projecting a sense of ancient authority. The goblin elder trembled. I name you Rigurd. May you lead your people with wisdom. A surge of magicals, precisely calibrated by Ciel, flowed from Rimuru. Rigurd's body shimmered, growing taller, his features becoming more defined. He evolved into a hobgoblin, his strength and intelligence noticeably enhanced. The other goblins gasped in awe, their previous fear replaced by utter astonishment and renewed hope. One by one, Rimuru named them. Gobda, his mischievous energy now channeled into a latent talent for agility. As the magicals flowed into him, Gobda's small, green body remained stubbornly small and green. Well, some things never change, I suppose. At least his talent for agility is off the charts now. Good old Gobda, always keeping things interesting with his lack of aesthetic evolution. Gobzo, gaining a surprising resilience. Each goblin underwent a subtle, yet significant, evolution. As the last name was bestowed, Rimuru felt the familiar drain of magicals, but it was far less severe than he remembered. Ciel had managed the output perfectly, ensuring he didn't collapse for 3 days as he had before. Magical consumption optimized. Recovery rate accelerated. No prolonged incapacitation expected, Master. Excellent. No need for unnecessary downtime this time. 3 days of napping was quite inefficient, in hindsight. The next day, the next challenge arrived swiftly, the direwolves. Their howls pierced the night, their glowing red eyes a fearsome sight. Their leader, a massive, scarred beast, snarled at the sight of the fortified goblin village. These are your enemies, Rimuru mentally projected to his goblins. Fear not, we will face them together. He didn't need to fight them head-on with overwhelming power. That would be too obvious, too quick, and frankly, less entertaining. Instead, he directed his newly evolved goblins. Rigurd, position your archers here. Gobda, use your agility to draw their attention to this flank. Others, prepare your spears. Before the battle, however, Rimuru paused. Now, your current equipment is rudimentary, he projected, his gaze sweeping over their chipped stone tools and rough wooden clubs. To truly defend yourselves and thrive, you'll need better. I will teach you how to craft proper weapons. The goblins blinked. Teach us, Rimuru-sama. Rigurd asked, bewildered. But how would a slime know such things? It was Gobda, ever the most casual, who blurted out, yeah, boss. Did you read a book on weapon making while you were in that cave? Or maybe you ate a blacksmith? Rimuru allowed a small, internal smile. This was the perfect opening. Something like that, Gobda, he projected, his voice taking on a slightly more reflective tone. Before I was a slime, I was human. From another world entirely. In that world, we had many ways of building things, of crafting tools and weapons far more advanced than what you see here. I died, and then I woke up as this. He rippled slightly, demonstrating his current form. So, yes, I know how to make bows, arrows, and spears. And much, much more. The goblins stared, their mouths agape. Their leader, a named monster, was once a human. And from another world. The concept was mind-boggling, yet the sincerity in Rimuru's presence, the wisdom he exuded, made it undeniably true. Rigurd's eyes gleamed with a new understanding of Rimuru's boundless potential. Meanwhile, deep within imaginary space, Veldora, who had been momentarily distracted from manga by the sudden shift in Rimuru's internal monologue, chuckled. So, he finally told them. Good, that's the part he showed me when I first entered this space. Always efficient, that one. Still, he hasn't shown them the really interesting stuff. Or me, for that matter. Veldora returned to his manga, a knowing smirk on his draconic face. Under Rimuru's patient guidance, and with CL's precise internal schematics, the goblins quickly learned. Rimuru demonstrated the optimal angles for arrowheads, the best wood for bows, and the balance needed for effective spears. Their initial attempts were clumsy, but with each correction, their understanding grew. By the time the direwolves arrived, the goblins were armed with crude but functional bows and a more fearsome array of sharpened spears. Back to the battle, Rimuru himself took a strategic position, allowing his subordinates to engage. He used his basic slime abilities, water blade, sticky thread, steel thread, but with a level of precision and efficiency that was astounding. He didn't just attack, he controlled the battlefield. His threads entangled direwolves, his water blades targeted weak points, and his movements were fluid, almost dance-like, guiding his allies to victory. Major moves and decisive actions in the direwolf battle. As the direwolves charged, Rimuru issued a mental command, "Goblins, focus fire. Aim for the legs." Simultaneously, he unleashed sticky thread, a nearly invisible, highly adhesive web, not to trap the entire pack, but to subtly impede the lead direwolf's charge, causing them to stumble and break formation. This created openings for the goblin archers, who, emboldened by their new strength and Rimuru's direct guidance, landed surprisingly accurate shots. The direwolf leader, a hulking beast with glowing red eyes, roared. Sensing the unusual coordination, it lunged directly at Rimuru, intending to crush the seemingly weak slime. This was the moment. Rimuru didn't evade completely. Instead, he executed a precise water manipulation maneuver, creating a slick, instantaneous patch of water beneath the direwolf leader's paws. The beast's charge, already off balance from the threads, became a clumsy slide. As it skidded past, Rimuru extended a pseudopod, activating Predator. This wasn't for consumption, but a momentary, targeted stun. The direwolf leader's senses overloaded for a split second, its ferocious momentum faltering. Now, Rimuru's mental command was sharp. The hobgoblins, led by a surprisingly agile Gobda, surged forward. Gobda, utilizing his newly enhanced agility, darted in and out, distracting the stunned leader while Rigurd and other hobgoblins delivered a coordinated volley of spear thrusts to its vulnerable underside, precisely where CL's analysis had indicated weaknesses. The leader fell. The remaining direwolves, demoralized and leaderless, quickly surrendered. Rimuru approached them, his aura calm. "You fought bravely. Now, you have a choice. Serve me, and live in harmony with the goblins, or perish." The direwolves, recognizing his overwhelming presence and the efficiency of his forces, bowed their heads. Rimuru then named their leader's son, Ranga, and the entire pack, initiating their evolution into Tempest Star Wolves. As the naming concluded, Rimuru felt a pleasant hum of magicules, not a debilitating drain. He had done it. The first major hurdle, the orc disaster, was still on the horizon, but his foundation was stronger, his allies more capable, and his path clearer. The ogres, now stepping out of the shadows, approached with a mixture of awe and caution. They had witnessed a display of power and leadership that defied their understanding. Rimuru's reputation, built on efficiency and subtle strength, had just taken its first monumental leap. One step closer to the masterpiece, Rimuru thought, a deep satisfaction settling within him. And the fun has only just begun. The air, still thick with the scent of battle, hummed with a new tension. The direwolves had surrendered, their leader Ranga now a loyal companion, but another presence had emerged from the shadows. 6 figures, tall and imposing, with skin the color of twilight and horns curving from their brows, stepped into the clearing. Ogres. Rimuru knew their names from his future memories, Benimaru, Shion, Soe, Hakuro, Kurobe, and Shuna, but for now, they were simply ogres. Rimuru observed them with a calm, knowing gaze. Right on schedule, or perhaps, a little earlier than last time. My subtle nudges must be working. He noted their wary expressions, their hands resting on their weapons. But also a flicker of intrigue in their eyes. They weren't hostile, not yet. "Who are you?" the lead ogre, Benimaru, demanded, his voice deep and resonant. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, swept over the hobgoblins, then settled on Rimuru. And what manner of monster commands such unusual loyalty from goblins and direwolves? Rimuru rippled slightly, projecting his thoughts. Greetings, mighty warriors. I am Rimuru. These are my subordinates, and this is our newly forged alliance. He paused, allowing his presence to convey a subtle authority. And you, I sense, are also in distress. Your village, it has fallen, hasn't it? A collective flinch went through the ogres. Benimaru's eyes narrowed, a flash of surprise crossing his face. How did you know? My senses are keen, Rimuru replied smoothly, a half-truth that Seal approved of. I detected the lingering scent of destruction, far more potent than any mere direwolf pack could cause. It speaks of a greater, more organized threat. Benimaru hesitated, then sighed, his posture slumping slightly. You are correct. Our village, it was destroyed by a band of orcs, led by a particularly cunning and powerful orc general. They were unlike any orcs we had encountered before, organized, brutal, and seemingly endless in number. We barely escaped with our lives. Orcs, already, and an orc general, hats earlier than I remember the orc lord's forces becoming so organized. My timeline shifts are having an impact. Rimuru internally noted. This meant the orc disaster was indeed accelerating, making his proactive measures even more crucial. We have been scouting since, a female ogre, Shuna, added, her voice soft but firm, seeking a new home, a safe haven. We observed your battle against the direwolves. We expected to find a weak village, easily overrun. Instead, she trailed off, her gaze lingering on the newly evolved hobgoblins, who stood taller and more confident than any goblin she'd ever seen. And the newly armed state of the entire goblin force. Instead, you witnessed a display of coordinated strength and unexpected leadership, Rimuru finished for her, his mental voice calm. We offer the same to you. A place within our growing community. Protection, prosperity, and the chance to rebuild and grow stronger. Benimaru's gaze was piercing. You offer much, slime. But what do you ask in return? And what makes you believe you can protect us from a force that overwhelmed even our warriors? His voice held a challenging edge, a clear test of Rimuru's resolve. We are ogres. We do not simply bow to any monster, regardless of its apparent strength. Our pride demands more than mere promises. Rimuru allowed a moment of silence, letting Benimaru's challenge hang in the air. Good. That's the Benimaru I know. Prideful, but pragmatic. Your pride is commendable, Rimuru addressed, his voice unwavering, carrying a subtle weight that seemed to press down on the clearing. And I respect it. I ask for your loyalty, your strength, and your wisdom. In return, I offer not just protection, but a future where your pride can truly flourish. He paused, letting his words sink in, then continued. His mental voice deepening, subtly allowing a fraction more of his true presence to bleed through, just enough to be felt by beings of their caliber. You ask what makes me believe I see and protect you from a force that overwhelmed your warriors. You witnessed a fraction of what we are capable of here today. But know this, the orc general you speak of, and the army he commands, will be crushed. Not by brute force alone, but by a superior strategy, a unity you have yet to witness, and a power that will ensure victory. Benimaru's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. He felt it, a faint, yet undeniable pressure emanating from the unassuming slime. It wasn't raw, destructive power, but something far more profound, an aura of absolute certainty, of inevitable triumph. It was the presence of a being who knew the outcome, not merely hoped for it. Shion, Soe, and Hakuro also stiffened, their senses picking up on the subtle shift in Rimuru's presence. My guidance, Rimuru continued, his voice now a quiet, compelling force, will ensure that your people, and all who join us, will rise to meet any threat. We will not merely survive, we will thrive. We will build a nation where all monsters can live in harmony. Free from fear, growing stronger together. He extended a pseudopod towards Benimaru, not as a demand, but as an invitation. Join us, and help me build this future. Your strength and wisdom will be invaluable. The ogres exchanged tense glances. Benimaru's internal struggle was evident. His pride warred with the undeniable truth of their desperate situation. The compelling aura of the slime before him. He saw the genuine promise in Rimuru's eyes, a vision of a future far grander than anything they could achieve alone. Finally, with a deep breath, Benimaru bowed his head. A gesture of true deference this time. Very well, Rimuru-sama. Your vision, it is compelling. We accept your offer. We, the surviving ogres, pledge our loyalty to you. The others followed suit, their vows echoing through the clearing, now filled with a new sense of purpose and hope. Rimuru felt the familiar, subtle shift as their loyalty solidified. Excellent. The core team is assembling faster this time. And their loyalty is forged in conviction, not just desperation. Building the future. Accelerated growth. With the ogres now integrated, the immediate need was to prepare for the looming orc disaster. Rimuru surveyed his growing populace. The goblins and dire wolves were evolving, but their equipment, despite the recent lessons, still had room for vast improvement. Now, my friends, Rimuru addressed the gathered goblins and newly arrived ogres. We will begin the accelerated construction of a more robust settlement. And we will continue to refine your armaments. He didn't just tell them what to build. He provided seal-generated schematics that were simple enough for them to follow, yet incredibly efficient. We will construct proper dwellings, a communal hall, and a defensive perimeter. Rimuru addressed. Utilize the strongest timber from the forest, and the stone from the nearby cliffs. Work together, and you will see results far beyond your expectations. The goblins, now eager and motivated, worked tirelessly alongside the more powerful ogres. Under Rimuru's constant, subtle oversight, the village transformed at an astonishing pace. What would have taken weeks in the original timeline was completed in mere days. The ogre blacksmith, Kurobe, found himself constantly learning from Rimuru's CL's seemingly endless well of knowledge, his own innate talent for crafting ignited by the otherworldly insights into metallurgy and design. Early mentorship. Forging future pillars. Rimuru dedicated significant time to his ultimate mentor role. He observed the ogres' combat styles, their magical affinities, and their leadership qualities. Ogre warrior, Rimuru addressed one afternoon, as the young leader practiced his flame magic. Your control is impressive, but your output could be more efficient. Focus not just on raw power, but on precision. Imagine your flames as an extension of your will, shaping and bending to your command. Rimuru then subtly adjusted the flow of magicals around the ogre, a tiny, undetectable nudge from Seal that allowed him to achieve a breakthrough he wouldn't have managed for months. The ogre's eyes widened, as his flames danced with newfound control. Meanwhile, Rimuru approached the stoic swordsman. Your swordsmanship is truly masterful, he addressed. However, he continued, allowing universal perception to give him a perfect, multidimensional view of the swordsman's form. Your stance, while powerful, leaves a 1 mm gap in your defense. Your final thrust, while devastating, wastes a fraction of a second in the transition. I can show you how to eliminate this inefficiency and increase your speed by a fraction that will matter in a true life or death battle. The swordsman, Hakuro, stared in disbelief. His own master had never seen such a flaw. He swung his blade, a flicker of doubt in his eyes, then turned his intense gaze on Rimuru. You speak with the confidence of a true master, he stated, his voice a low rumble. But you are a slime. You have no form for a sword. How can you, who have never held a blade, presume to teach a swordsman of my caliber? This was the moment. Rimuru didn't have to hold a sword to prove his point, he had to demonstrate an impossible level of analytical insight. You are right, Rimuru addressed, his voice calm and firm. I cannot hold a blade. But I have seen countless forms, countless techniques, across dimensions you can't even imagine. Before I was a slime, I was a human from another world. My death brought me here. My knowledge comes not from a lifetime of practice, but from a life of observation. I can see the flaws in your form because I have seen every form. I am the culmination of a world's knowledge, reborn. Hakuro was stunned into silence. The goblins had heard a similar story, but hearing it from Rimuru directly, delivered with such an unwavering presence, was a completely different experience. Rimuru's words resonated with an unnerving truth. His critique wasn't just a suggestion, it was a revelation that completely changed Hakuro's understanding of his own art. He then sought out the stealthy ogre. Your camouflage is impressive, Rimuru addressed. But your flow of magicals, though minimal, still creates a faint ripple in the ambient magical density. It would be detectable by a sufficiently powerful foe from a great distance. Focus on dampening your magical signature entirely, rather than just masking your physical form. The ogre, Soe, who prided himself on his stealth, was shocked. He had never considered this possibility. Rimuru's critique was a revelation that completely changed his understanding of his own art. Rimuru didn't fight alongside them, nor did he overtly display his sealed power. Instead, he offered insights, posed challenges, and provided the perfect environment for their growth. His presence alone, the sheer depth of his knowledge and the calm confidence with which he imparted it, inspired them to push beyond their limits. They saw him not just as a leader, but as a living legend, a source of infinite wisdom. The ogres, now fully committed to Rimuru, felt a surge of pride. They had witnessed his strategic brilliance, his unexpected past, and his ability to uplift even the weakest. Tempest was no longer just a goblin village, it was a burgeoning nation, guided by an enlightened architect. Rapidly becoming a formidable power in the great forest of Jura. The pieces are falling into place beautifully, Rimuru thought, a deep satisfaction settling within him. The foundation is strong. Now, let's see what else we can build. The newly established village, now bustling with the combined efforts of goblins and ogres, felt a different kind of energy. It was no longer a place of mere survival, but one of purpose and ambition. The ogre blacksmith toiled tirelessly, his innate talents honed by CL's insights. The ogre warriors trained with a newfound focus, their skills rapidly evolving under Rimuru's watchful eye. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the nascent settlement, a ripple of potent magical energy spread through the air. Rimuru, in the middle of a strategic planning session with his allies, instinctively raised a pseudopod. Something is approaching, he addressed, his mental voice calm but firm. It is a potent magical signature. And it is coming with great speed. His allies, especially the seasoned ogre warriors, stiffened, their hands instinctively reaching for their weapons. Ah, the magical signature. It's beautiful and powerful, but not a threat, Rimuru thought to himself, a sense of familiarity washing over him. It's a dryad, it must be trainee. He then allowed a hint of his deeper, more truthful thoughts to surface. And the orc army she's about to warn us about. A pivotal event that will shape the future. I could deal with them myself, even in this form. But that's not how a nation is built. This is an opportunity. A chance to show my allies my strategic mind, to forge our unity in the face of a shared crisis, and to earn their true trust. Just as they braced themselves for an attack, a figure emerged from the treeline. It was a beautiful woman with long green hair and a dress made of intertwining vines and flowers. A dryad. Her presence was overwhelming, not with malice, but with the sheer weight of a long-lived and powerful guardian of the forest. The ogres and goblins froze, their instincts screaming at them to kneel before a being of such authority. Even the young ogre leader, prideful as he was, could not help but take a half step back, his eyes wide with awe and a touch of primal fear. "Greetings, monster of the cave," she addressed, her voice melodic but laced with urgency. "I am Trainee, a guardian of the great forest of Jura. I come to you with a plea for help. A great threat is upon us." Rimuru smiled gently, a sense of relief washing over him. The timing was perfect. He allowed his presence to be felt, a steady and reassuring anchor for both his allies and Trainee. Trainee continued, "An army of orcs, led by a fearsome orc general, is consuming everything in their path. Their magic is corrupting the very land, and they show no signs of stopping. Their path will lead them to the lizardmen's domain, a marsh to the east. If they are not stopped, the balance of the forest will be destroyed." The young ogre leader's eyes flared with an eager fire. "A chance for retribution. We will face this orc general head-on, Rimuru-sama." "Patience," Rimuru addressed calmly. "This is not a simple raid. This is a unified army, a calamity. We must proceed with strategy, not just brute force. The stealthy ogre, I need you to lead a stealth mission. Infiltrate the orc army's camp, get a head count, identify their command structure, and determine the full extent of their strength. Do not engage. Report back as soon as you have information." The stealthy ogre bowed, a faint shimmer of magical-infused shadow already beginning to form around him. "Understood, Rimuru-sama. The information will be yours." Meanwhile, Rimuru chose a delegation for the lizardmen. The young ogre leader, the female ogre, and the strong female ogre. "You will go with a small escort. Explain the situation and extend our offer of alliance. Do not let their pride get in the way of common sense. Explain that we are a new nation of monsters, and that we must stand united against this existential threat." The young ogre leader nodded, his pride momentarily humbled by the gravity of the mission. The strong female ogre and the female ogre looked determined, their gazes unwavering. Trainee, her eyes wide with a new appreciation for the slime's foresight and leadership, offered her thanks. As the delegations departed, Rimuru continued to oversee the village's fortifications. He was building more than just a home. He was building a war machine, a new type of monster nation that was both a haven and a fortress. He was an architect of a new world, a world where the weak could rise and the strong could lead. The marshlands were a world of their own, a humid, murky expanse of tangled roots, stagnant water, and the constant hum of insects. It was a domain of the lizardmen, a proud, isolationist tribe that saw themselves as the rightful guardians of the wetlands. The lizardmen chieftain, a wise but weary old leader, listened to the delegation from the mysterious slime Rimuru, his brow furrowed in contemplation. The message, delivered by the calm and articulate young ogre leader, spoke of a terrifying orc army and a plan for a united front. An orc army of that size is a grave threat indeed, the chieftain stated, his voice a low, raspy croak. However, to ally with a tribe of goblins and ogres, your leader is a slime, you say? A leader of goblins and direwolves. What authority does he have to command a unified force? He has the authority of a true leader, the female ogre addressed. Her voice calm but firm. Even the guardian of the forest, the dryad trainee, came to our leader for help, pleading with him to stop the orc disaster. The chieftain's eyes widened, a flicker of genuine shock on his weary face. The mention of a dryad, a powerful and reclusive protector of the forest, seeking aid from a mere slime was unheard of. Gabiru's arrogant posture wavered for a split second, a look of disbelief crossing his features before he quickly masked it with a sneer. The female ogre, sensing she had made her point, continued, his vision extends beyond our own tribe's survival. He seeks to protect all of the great forest of Jura. The chieftain's eldest son, a flamboyant and arrogant warrior named Gabiru, scoffed. A slime, posing as a leader, ridiculous. He flexed his biceps, his spear glistening in the dim light of the chieftain's hall. My father's words are too generous. We are the noble lizard men. We do not need the help of some low-level monsters to defeat a few overgrown pigs. I, Gabiru, will lead our warriors to victory. The chieftain sighed, rubbing his temples. Gabiru, have you not heard the reports of other tribes being annihilated? This is not an ordinary orc army. Father, your fear is unbecoming of a leader. I say we take the initiative. We will strike them down before they even reach our territory. Gabiru's bluster was met with a chorus of support from the younger lizardmen, their pride swelling at his boastful display. The young ogre leader, sensing the futility of the discussion, simply stood and bowed respectfully. We have delivered our message and offered our alliance. We will return to our leader, Rimuru-sama, and await your decision. We hope you choose wisely, for the sake of your people. As the delegation departed, the chieftain looked out at the vast marsh, his heart heavy with worry. He knew the arrogance of his son was leading them down a dangerous path, and the truth of the situation was far more dire than Gabiru could comprehend. He could only hope that the wisdom of this, Rimuru, was as great as his emissaries claimed. The stage was set for a confrontation that would decide the fate of the great forest of Jura. The days following the Dryad's visit were a maelstrom of activity in Rimuru's village. The stealthy ogre, his form a living shadow, returned from his mission with a grim report. He knelt before Rimuru, his voice a low, gravelly whisper. Rimuru-sama, the orc army, it is unlike anything I have ever seen. Their numbers are vast, easily 10 times the size of a normal orc tribe. Our magical signature is not of a single entity, but a corrupting wave that spreads like a plague. He paused, a flicker of genuine fear in his eyes. And their leader, I could not get a clear visual, but the aura I felt was overwhelming. It's not just an army, it's a disaster in motion. Rimuru processed the information instantly, CL's analysis confirming the ogre's fears. So, the orc disaster is in full effect. A single orc lord with a unique skill that allows him to consume and absorb his own kind for power. This is the catalyst for my intervention. Rimuru turned his gaze to the assembled ogres and goblins, who listened with a mix of dread and defiance. The time for talk is over, he projected, his voice now a steady hum of calm authority. We will not let this army destroy the great forest of Jura. We will face them. Meanwhile, in the lizardmen's murky territory, a sinister figure emerged from the swamps. He was a small, wizened monster with a cloak of dark leaves and a cruel smirk on his face. This was Gelmid, a self-proclaimed demon who found perverse joy in manipulating monsters for his own amusement. He found Gabiru, who was still stewing in his arrogant fury after the ogre delegation's visit. Gabiru, Gelmid purred, his voice like the slither of a snake. I have heard of your valor, your strength, and your ambition. It is a pity your old fool of a father and his cowardly advisors hold you back. They would have you wait for a slime to save you. Pathetic. Gabiru's chest swelled with pride. You speak the truth. I, Gabiru, will not stand by while the destiny of the lizardmen is decided by others. Then let me show you the path to true glory, Gelmid continued, his eyes glinting with malice. He presented Gabiru with a powerful, glowing staff, pulsating with dark magicals. With this, And the help of a few loyal followers, you can overthrow your weak father, take your rightful place as chieftain, and lead your people to a swift victory over the orcs. He great forest will tremble at your name, Gabiru the Great. Blinded by ambition and Gelmud's flattery, Gabiru took the staff. He gathered his most loyal warriors and, without a word to his father, launched a brazen attack on the orc army. They stormed out of the swamp, a tide of arrogant bravado against a sea of ravenous monsters. The orc army, however, was not just an army. It was a single, unified organism of destruction. Gabiru and his warriors fought with all their might, but their individual strength was no match for the endless, regenerating horde. The orcs devoured their fallen comrades, growing stronger with each bite. Gabiru's charge, so full of bluster, crumbled in a matter of minutes. His warriors were slaughtered, their bodies consumed and their spirits broken. Gabiru himself, battered and defeated, was forced to retreat, leaving his people to face the full wrath of the orc disaster. The chieftain, watching from a distance, saw his son's folly unfold. He saw the inevitable defeat, the slaughter of his best warriors, and the utter desperation of his tribe. He fell to his knees, his heart heavy with grief and regret. All those lives lost for the sake of a boy's pride, he thought. The weight of his own failure to stop Gabiru a crushing burden. In his darkest hour, with his people on the brink of annihilation, he had only one last hope, the mysterious leader of the new monster nation. The slime named Rimuru. Back in his village, Rimuru's demeanor remained unchanged. Seal had already reported on Gabiru's arrogance and his inevitable downfall. Rimuru saw this as a necessary, albeit tragic, step. It is a shame to see so many lives wasted needlessly, he mused, a flicker of genuine sadness passing through him before his strategic mind took over. But this humility is a lesson the lizardmen, and my own allies, needed to learn. The time has come, Rimuru addressed his forces. The orc disaster is upon us. The lizardmen's domain is in peril, and they have no one left to turn to. We will not wait for them to ask for help. We will march. We will show the great forest of Jura what a true nation of monsters looks like. With Rimuru at the head, his now powerful and disciplined army of goblins, direwolves, and ogres moved out. This was not a reactive defense, but a calculated, confident move by a leader who knew exactly what was coming and how to defeat it. The march was a marvel of silent, disciplined efficiency. Rimuru's army, a blend of hobgoblins, direwolves, and ogre warriors, moved as a single, unified entity. There was no chaotic shouting, no panicked urgency. Each step was measured, each formation precise. The direwolves, now Tempest Star Wolves, carried the hobgoblins with a speed that defied their bulky forms, while the ogres moved with a stoic, powerful grace. They were a force of calm resolve against the impending storm of chaos. At the head of this procession, Rimuru rode upon a large, powerful direwolf, his body glowing with a faint, reassuring light. His mind, however, was a whirlwind of calculations. According to Ciel's analysis, the orc army will reach the lizardmen's main settlement within the hour. We will be cutting it close. But my forces are more than capable of handling this. The goal isn't a fight to the death, it's a surgical strike, a show of overwhelming strategic superiority. He had no intention of allowing his people to be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. His plan was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its execution. He would use his own unique abilities to create a battlefield where the orcs' single-minded assault was a fatal weakness. Meanwhile, in the heart of the lizardmen's settlement, despair had set in. The chieftain, a broken man, watched as the last of his warriors were decimated by the encroaching horde. The air was thick with the stench of death and the insatiable hunger of the orcs. The orc disaster was a reality, not a myth. He had seen his people, proud and strong, simply vanish into the endless, consuming mass. Suddenly, a massive, muscular orc, far larger than the others, appeared at the front of the army. Its skin was a sickly green, its eyes glowed with a malevolent, corrupted magic. This was the Orc Lord, a being of immense power, now swollen with the lives of countless monsters it had consumed. It let out a deafening roar that shook the very foundations of the chieftain's hall. This was not a monster. It was a calamity given form. The chieftain, his hope extinguished, could only watch as his civilization was about to be devoured. He closed his eyes, awaiting the end, a prayer forming on his lips for the slime Rimuru to be safe and far away from this place of certain death. He had foolishly doubted a true leader, and now his people would pay the ultimate price. Just as the orc disaster prepared to unleash its final blow, a different sound echoed across the swamp. Not the roar of battle, but a steady, rhythmic march. The sound was alien to the forest, a purposeful cadence that spoke of discipline and order. Rimuru's army, now within sight of the lizardmen's settlement, paused. They formed a perfect line, their weapons gleaming in the dim light of the marsh. Their leader, a small slime, floated high above them on the back of a direwolf. He was an unassuming figure, but the aura of power he projected was undeniable. He gave a single, calm mental command. Prepare for battle. The Orc Lord, its senses sharp with corrupted power, turned its head. Its small, beady eyes focused on the new arrivals. They were few, so few, compared to its vast army. It saw a single slime, some goblins, and some wolves. It let out a condescending grunt, a sound that said, a mere handful of insects, come to their slaughter. Rimuru simply smiled. He had no intention of engaging in a battle of attrition. He would end this in a single, decisive stroke. This was not a test of strength. It was a demonstration of the power of a true architect, a master of a perfected world. The stage was set. The Orc Lord's condescending grunt was the last sound of its foolish arrogance. It was a calamity, a being of pure, unthinking hunger, but it was not an ultimate existence. It did not possess a will. Nor did it have a true leader. Rimuru, floating above his forces, extended a pseudopod. His aura, which had been calm and contained, flared with a controlled intensity. It wasn't the boundless, reality-shattering power he possessed, but it was more than enough. He would give the orc disaster a taste of what it meant to face a true monster. You speak of slaughter. Rimuru's voice, amplified by a surge of magicules, echoed across the swamp, a sound that was both melodic and terrifying. Then allow me to show you what a true monster's power looks like. With a single, mental command, Seal executed the plan. The air around Rimuru shimmered, and a vortex of dark, crackling energy began to gather. This was not a flashy spell, but a precisely calculated, highly compressed burst of magic. Execute. Black lightning. A single bolt of obsidian lightning shot from Rimuru's hand. It was not aimed at the Orc Lord, but at a specific point on the ground, a nexus of corrupt magic where the orcs' collective hunger was at its most concentrated. The lightning struck with the force of a divine judgment, a deafening thunderclap that ripped a fissure in the earth and sent a shockwave of pure energy through the entire orc army. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. The orcs on the front lines, their bodies fused together by the Orc Lord's unique skill, disintegrated in a flash of corrupted light. The shockwave disrupted their collective consciousness, shattering their unified will and throwing the entire army into a state of panic and disarray. This was the opening. From the shadows, Soe watched the event unfold. His mission had been to observe, to understand the orcs' terrifying power, and he had seen enough to know their numbers were overwhelming. He had seen their unified hunger, their relentless advance. Yet, in a single, effortless strike, Rimuru Sama had shattered that strength. Soe's body, for the first time since he became a warrior, trembled not from fear, but from a newfound awe. The raw power on display was an order of magnitude beyond what he, or any of his kin, had conceived of. He had spied on an army, but his master had just effortlessly dismantled a disaster. Benimaru and Shion, their swords already drawn for battle, stood frozen for a moment. They had known Rimuru was powerful, but this was a different kind of power. It wasn't just strength, it was an absolute, godlike control over the battlefield. Their earlier resentment and pride were now replaced by a loyalty so profound it was akin to faith. This was not just a leader. This was a king worthy of their ultimate devotion. In the lizardmen's settlement, the chieftain, who had braced himself for annihilation, could only stare in speechless horror and awe. The roar of the Orc Lord was silenced, replaced by a thunder that shook the ground. He watched as the unstoppable horde of death began to tear itself apart, a direct result of the small, unassuming slime's single strike. He had doubted this being, had allowed his foolish son's pride to endanger his entire race, and now a miracle had arrived, a terrifying yet beautiful force of order emerging from the chaos. Now, Rimuru's mental command was a battle cry. The ogres, led by a fiery, determined Benimaru, charged forward. They were not fighting a cohesive army, but a stunned, confused mass. Benimaru, his sword wreathed in flames, became a whirlwind of destructive power, his strikes precise and deadly. Shion, her massive odachi in hand, followed closely behind, her raw, monstrous strength tearing through the orcs' ranks. Soe, a blur of motion, used his shadows to infiltrate the enemy lines, striking at their weak points with silent efficiency. The hobgoblins, now fighting with the courage of their new leader, moved with a newfound confidence. They were no longer just a defensive force, they were an attacking one. Gobta, riding at the head of a pack of Tempest Star Wolves, became a force of nature. His agility allowing him to dart through the chaotic fray with ease, his wolf's powerful jaws snapping at the orcs' throats. The battle was not an endurance contest, it was a massacre. The orc disaster's greatest strength, its numbers, had been turned into its greatest weakness. With its collective will shattered and its body dismembered, the orc lord could do nothing but roar in impotent rage as its army was systematically dismantled. Rimuru, watching the carnage, a faint smile on his face. The plan was working perfectly. This wasn't just a battle of strength, or a battle of wits. It was a battle of true leadership. A demonstration of what a unified, disciplined, and powerful nation of monsters could achieve when led by a true architect. The great forest of Jura was witnessing the birth of its new king. The orc army, shattered by Rimuru's single, strategic blow, was now a rudderless ship in a storm. Their collective will, their greatest strength, was gone. Rimuru's allies, a blend of hobgoblins, ogres, and Tempest Star Wolves, fell upon them like a tide, their movements precise and their attacks swift. The orcs, overwhelming numbers, were now a liability, a confused mass of panicked monsters that stumbled over one another. On the ground, the hobgoblins, led by a surprisingly mature Gobta, moved with a coordination that was alien to their race. A few months ago, they would have charged headlong into battle, hoping brute force would win the day. Now, they were an organized unit. As a wave of bewildered orcs charged, Gobta issued a sharp, mental command to his squad. A talent he'd developed under Rimuru's tutelage. Flank right, use the terrain to your advantage. He thought, his agility allowing him to dart around the orcs with ease. The goblins, now equipped with better spears and armor, obeyed without question. Their strikes were not random slashes, but targeted thrusts to the orcs, vital points, a lesson Rimuru had taught them through countless practice drills. This is what it feels like to be strong, Gobta reflected, a thrill running through him as he parried a clumsy orc blade with his spear. Not just strong, but smart. This is all thanks to Rimuru-sama. Beside them, the Tempest Star Wolves, led by Ranga, moved with a terrifying grace. Ranga, no longer a simple beast of instinct, used his newly acquired tactical mind to direct his pack. He communicated with his wolves through a low, powerful growl that conveyed complex battle formations. They didn't just bite, they targeted the orcs' flanks, driving them into the waiting spears of the hobgoblins. The orcs are nothing without their will, Ranga thought, his eyes glowing. We are more than just a pack. We are a part of a unified whole, a single, living weapon under the command of our master. Meanwhile, the orc lord, isolated and enraged, let out a final, furious roar. Its eyes, once filled with a corrupted hunger, now held a flicker of something new, awareness. It was a being of power. But it was also a puppet of the unique skill it had consumed. It had been driven by an insatiable, endless desire to devour, a living embodiment of the orc disaster. And it, Rimuru's mental command, was gentle, but firm. Benimaru, his sword wreathed in roaring crimson flames, lunged forward. His movements were not reckless, but elegant and precise, honed by Rimuru's tutelage. His once simple fire magic had evolved, purified into a scorching, focused flame that burned away the corruption of the orc disaster itself. The blade, a testament to his accelerated growth, was a conduit for a force that was both destructive and cleansing. I am not just a swordsman, Benimaru thought, a fire in his heart matching the flames on his blade. I am a warrior of the Tempest. Rimuru-sama has shown me a way to control my power. A way to turn my rage into a focused, deliberate force. This is not the wildfire of a petty monster, but the purifying flame of a true commander. Soe, a flash of shadow and steel, appeared at the orc lord's back. He didn't just attack, he bound it. From his shadow, he manifested powerful, razor-thin chains, a perfected fusion of his shadow and steel thread abilities. The chains wrapped around the orc lord's legs, each link glowing with a dark energy that anchored the massive creature in place, preventing its escape. My skills have grown beyond what I could have imagined, Soe mused. His mind as sharp as the chains he had created. This power, this precision, is thanks to Rimuru-sama. I am no longer a simple spy, I am a tool of perfect execution, a shadow that can bind even a calamity. Shion, her immense strength now controlled with perfect focus, swung her massive odachi with a force that created a shockwave of its own. It was not a wild, untamed blow, but a precise, devastating strike aimed at the orc lord's very foundation. Her enhanced power, honed by Rimuru's mentorship, was now a surgical tool of destruction. This isn't just brute strength, Xian's mind, clear and focused, echoed. It's power with a purpose. It's the strength to protect, to serve my master, to execute his will with a single, flawless strike. I am not the monster I once was. I am the blade he has forged. Hakuro, a blur of motion and steel, moved through the chaotic battlefield with a serene grace. While the others focused on the Orc Lord, he served as their protector and an exec. Ushioner of the Orc generals that might have interfered. His swordsmanship, already a pinnacle of their race, had been refined into a deadly art by Rimuru's guidance. He moved with an economy of motion. Each strike a perfect arc that severed an Orc general's corrupted limb before the monster even had time to fully comprehend its defeat. Strength is not about ferocity, but control, Hakuro's mind, a serene pool of focus, reflected. My master has shown me the path to true swordsmanship, to strike only when necessary, and to make that strike absolute. This is the sword of a raging tempest. The combined assault was too much. Benimaru's blade, with its purifying flame, struck the Orc Lord's core. The creature, its corrupted body unable to withstand the purifying heat, let out a final, agonize-ing shriek before its body began to disintegrate. As its form began to fade, a ghostly, translucent figure emerged from within. It was the original Orc Lord, a monster filled not with malice, but with a profound and tragic regret. Its voice, a whisper of a dying soul, reached Rimuru's consciousness. Thank you for freeing me from this curse of hunger. My will was taken by the skill. Rimuru felt a pang of sorrow. The Orc disaster was not an evil being, it was a victim, just as so many had been. Rimuru, understanding its plight, reached out a pseudopod. I will free you from your hunger, he promised. He activated his unique skill, Predator. The Orc Lord's fading essence, its unique skill and all, was consumed. Inside his imaginary space, Seal worked her magic, a silent process of analysis and purification. The skill starved, a potent but dangerous unique skill, was carefully extracted, purified, and stored. The Orc Lord's soul, now free of its curse, was allowed to rest in peace. With the Orc disaster completely neutralized, silence fell over the swamp. The remaining Orcs, their minds now clear, simply collapsed, their hunger and rage gone. They were just monsters again, exhausted and bewildered. From the lizardmen's settlement, the chieftain and his surviving people emerged. They walked through the battlefield, a landscape of defeated Orcs, their eyes wide with disbelief and awe. The overwhelming disaster, the calamity that had destroyed so many, was simply gone. The chieftain, his old bones trembling, walked toward Rimuru, his face etched with shame and profound gratitude. He saw not a terrifying monster, but a small, unassuming slime surrounded by a formidable army of disciplined warriors. He knelt, his forehead touching the muddy ground. Rimuru-sama, he croaked, his voice thick with emotion. Forgive my foolishness. Forgive my son's arrogance. You are a true leader. You are a true king. You have saved us from certain annihilation. We, the lizardmen, owe you our lives. We pledge our eternal loyalty to you. Gabiru, battered and broken, crawled his way to the front. He looked at the chieftain, then at Rimuru, and the shame in his heart was a physical weight. The pride he had so foolishly put his trust in was now dust. He had led his people to a needless slaughter, all for the sake of his arrogance, only to be saved by a monster who he had ridiculed. He, too, knelt, a silent, humble figure. I am a fool, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Forgive me, Rimuru-sama, I am yours to command. Rimuru accepted their oaths with a gentle nod. He then gave an order to his people, we will not celebrate yet. There are many dead, both orc and lizardmen. We will give them a proper funeral first. Then, we will feast. The funeral was a solemn affair. The lizardmen and Rimuru's allies worked together, honoring the fallen without distinction. It was a somber, respectful process that solidified a bond born not just in battle, but in shared grief. Afterwards, a great feast was held. It was a celebration of survival, of new beginnings. As the ogres, goblins, and lizardmen shared food and drink, Rimuru watched them, a profound sense of satisfaction settling within him. The foundations of his nation had been laid not with stone and wood, but with loyalty, trust, and a shared victory over a calamity. The great forest of Jura had a new, unexpected king. The celebration was a boisterous affair, but the underlying tension remained. Rimuru had saved the great forest of Jura, uniting former enemies in a single, decisive stroke. Now, the surviving leaders, the lizardmen chieftain, His humbled son Gabiru, the goblin elder Rigurd, the hobgoblin commander Gobda, the ogres, and the mighty Tempest Star Wolves all gathered in the heart of the newly peaceful swamp. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of gratitude, reverence, and unspoken questions. Rimuru, his formidable aura now calmed, sat upon a makeshift throne of mud and swamp flora. A position of power he had never asked for, yet one he had earned. A soft, ethereal voice drifted through the clearing. It seems the storm has passed. The orc disaster has been quelled. From the depths of the forest, a beautiful dryad emerged, her form crafted from twisting vines and glowing flowers. It was Trainee, a high-level spiritual life form and a guardian of the great forest of Jura. She guarded Rimuru with an intensity that seemed to pierce his very being. Her presence commanded the respect of every monster present. On behalf of the great forest of Jura, I extend our sincerest gratitude to you, Rimuru-sama, Trainee said. Her voice like the rustle of leaves. You have achieved what no one thought possible. You have united the warring factions and brought an end to a calamity. For this, we, the inhabitants of this forest, are in your debt. The lizard men chieftain stepped forward, bowing low. It is true, Rimuru-sama. You are a true king of monsters, and you are the only one worthy of leading us. Gabiru, his arrogance now replaced by humility, bowed his head deeply. I, too, agree. Forgive my past insolence. You have shown us what true power and wisdom look like. Rigurd, the goblin elder, spoke for his people. His voice filled with reverence. We, the hobgoblins and our goblin kin, have already pledged our loyalty to you, Rimuru-sama. We will follow you to the ends of the world. The ogre leader, his gaze steady and filled with conviction, knelt. My kind, the ogres, have seen your power. We have been reborn by your guidance. We offer you our unwavering loyalty and strength. Your word is our command. Our king. The other ogres knelt in silent, absolute agreement. Rimuru rippled gently, his voice carrying an unexpected weight. I accept your loyalty, but I must ask you this. Ogre leader, you came to me consumed by vengeance, with the sole purpose of destroying the orcs. Now you offer me your unwavering loyalty. Tell me, what has changed? Benimaru, his gaze firm, rose slightly. We came to you as desperate monsters, seeking a powerful ally to aid in our vengeance. But you did not simply point us at our enemy. You taught us. You showed us the true potential of our strength, not as a wild, destructive force, but as a controlled, purposeful power. In this battle, we learned that our true growth came not from our hatred, but from your guidance. We pled our loyalty not as a temporary alliance, but as your chosen warriors, reborn under your vision. The other ogres nodded in solemn agreement, their eyes reflecting the same profound conviction. Trainee watched the scene with a knowing look. This was no mere monster, this was a force of change. She smiled faintly and spoke again. It is clear, the will of the forest is in agreement. Rimuru-sama, we, the guardians of the forest, wish to bestow upon you the title of Chancellor of the Great Forest of Jura. With this title, you will have the authority to lead us all and ensure our prosperity. Ripple of approval passed through the assembled monsters. The title of Chancellor was a powerful one, a sign of Rimuru's newfound status and authority over the entire region. But Rimuru, with CL's perfect analysis and foresight, knew better. He rippled gently, his form glowing slightly. His voice, a soothing but firm tone that held the quiet authority of a true leader, filled the air. Thank you, Trainee-san. Thank you, everyone. I am grateful for your trust, and I understand your intentions. He paused, letting his words sink in. However, I must politely refuse the title of Chancellor. A collective gasp broke the silence. The monsters looked at each other in confusion. He had saved them, and now he was refusing the position of power they were offering. Even Trainee's calm expression wavered for a moment. I will not be a chancellor, Rimuru declared, his voice gaining a deeper resonance. I will not be a leader who merely manages a collection of factions. My vision is not to govern the forest. My vision is to build something far greater. I will not merely unite monsters, I will create a nation where all races can live and thrive together, regardless of their species. A nation built on trust, cooperation, and law. A nation that will serve as a beacon of hope and a center of prosperity for the entire world. His form seemed to grow slightly, not in size, but in presence. The power he was projecting was not aggressive, but a force of absolute will and conviction. I will build an empire, he announced, his voice echoing with the quiet certainty of a monarch. A kingdom, a nation that will rival any human kingdom. And I will not be its chancellor. I will be its king. The words hung in the air, a statement of audacious ambition that shook the very foundation of the old power structure. This land, the great forest of Jura, will be the heart of my nation, he continued. And my nation's name will be the Jura Tempest Federation. The monsters, from the smallest goblin to the most powerful ogre, stood in stunned silence. They had expected a leader, a protector, but Rimuru had just declared himself a founder, a king. He was not here to simply save them, he was here to remake their world. Trainee's eyes widened, a look of profound astonishment and respect on her face. A single tear of magical essence rolled down her cheek, and her form shimmered with a profound emotion. She had been tasked with observing the forest, but what she was witnessing was the dawn of a new era. This was the destiny of the forest, the birth of a nation far beyond what she or any of her kind had imagined. This was not a monster, this was a true creator. She knelt, her knees touching the ground. Rimuru-sama no, my king, she whispered, her voice filled with an overwhelming sense of devotion. You are truly worthy. I, the Dryad trainee, and all the spirits of the great forest of Jura, pledge our loyalty to you. May the Jura Tempest Federation prosper forever under your rule. The monsters echoed her pledge, their voices a chorus of reverence. But as they did, Rimuru looked past them, towards the still bewildered mass of defeated orcs. He saw not a defeated enemy, but a people lost, their will shattered. Their very existence a curse they had not chosen. Rimuru now looked to his new allies. My people, listen, he said, his voice imbued with the gentle yet unyielding compassion of a king. I understand your confusion, especially after all you have suffered. But the orc disaster was not an act of malice. The orcs were driven by a curse, a madness born from a desperate situation. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the gathered monsters, letting his words sink in. My senses, and my unique knowledge of this world, have shown me the truth. A terrible drought had ravaged their homeland, and they were starving. The famine pushed them to the brink, and in their desperation, they were easy prey for a cunning villain who gave them the curse of the orc disaster. They did not choose to devour everything. They were forced to. He then looked to Benimaru, whose face still held a flicker of doubt. Their actions were born from desperation, not evil. And now, they are free of that curse, and they are lost. But they are a people of immense strength and a powerful constitution. Their bodies are made for labor. My vision is not to simply forgive them, it is to use their strength to build our nation. We will teach them to farm, to fish, and to construct. With their labor, we can build a kingdom of immense prosperity, one that will never again suffer from famine or want. They will not be our prisoners. They will be our citizens, our builders, our partners in forging a new world. Rimuru's words hung in the air, a final, definitive statement. The orcs, a broken mass of thousands, who had been listening with vacant, bewildered expressions, finally began to stir. They looked at each other, their eyes, once filled with the madness of the curse, now holding a fragile, dawning comprehension. A few of the older orcs, those who remembered a time before the famine, began to weep, quiet sobs of relief that shook their massive frames. They had been freed, not just from the disaster's influence, but from their own desperate actions. The orc general, whose mind was now cleared of the curse, crawled forward, his body still trembling. He knelt before Rimuru, not out of fear, but with a profound, overwhelming sense of gratitude. My king, you have shown us mercy we did not deserve, he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. You have freed our souls. But our sins, the terrible things we did, are not so easily washed away. How can we ever be worthy of your forgiveness? Rimuru's aura, which had been gentle, now took on a new quality, an unyielding, comforting warmth. He looked down at the kneeling orc general, and his voice, though soft, carried the weight of an unshakable promise. Your sins have already been taken from you. I consumed the original orc lord's soul, the one you knew as Geld. And with it, I absorbed all of the pain and suffering he caused. I have taken the curse of the orc disaster upon myself. I consumed the orc lord's soul alongside your sins as I promised to him. The collective burden of your people's actions has been purged. The orc general's eyes widened, a fresh wave of tears flowing down his face. He had offered his service. But Rimuru had already given everything. He looked at the other orcs, their faces now mirroring his own shock and dawning realization. This was not a king who forgave, this was a king who bore their suffering for them. We have no words, he choked out. We will serve you until the end of time, with every fiber of our being. We will be your swords, your builders, your citizens, whatever you command. The statement was so profound, so utterly alien to their way of life, that it silenced the entire clearing once more. The ogres, who had just been celebrating their vengeance, stared in disbelief. Rimuru, however, simply held his gaze, his conviction unshakable. The birth of a nation was not just a name, it was a philosophy. And this was the first pillar of its creed. The morning after the grand declaration, a sense of nervous anticipation hung in the air. The monsters gathered in the swamp, from the smallest goblin to the most imposing ogre, were still processing the events of the previous day. A single, unassuming slime had not only ended a calamity and declared himself their king, but had also forgiven their greatest enemy and tasked them all with an audacious project, building a nation. Rimuru, still in his small, gelatinous form, hovered calmly at the center of the gathering. His presence, however, was a beacon of unshakable confidence, a source of quiet energy that radiated across the clearing. The orcs, no longer a frenzied army but a defeated, confused people, knelt in a massive, silent group, their heads bowed in shame and uncertainty. Rimuru's attention turned to the orc general, the broken warrior who had offered his service the previous day. The orc, a massive figure of muscle and tusk, still trembled slightly from the shock of his mind being cleared and his soul being unburdened. "Rise," Rimuru projected, his voice carrying a gentle yet firm authority. "The past is done, your people's sins have been purified. Now, you will begin a new life, a new purpose." The orc general slowly rose to his feet, his eyes wide and uncertain. Rimuru extended a pseudopod toward him. "I promised you a new path, a new will. I will start by giving you a new name. It will be the name of your old self. Your father's name, a name that will signify strength and honor, not just the destruction you were forced to bring. From this day forward, your name is Geld." A colossal wave of magicules, perfectly calculated and controlled by Seal, flowed from Rimuru into the orc general. The orc's body pulsed with a faint, golden light. His form, which had been massive and brutish, now began to refine. His tusks grew shorter and cleaner, his posture became more upright, and his skin took on a deeper, more earthen tone. When the light subsided, a new being stood before them, a powerful, stoic figure of immense stature, his face now more thoughtful than savage. He was an orc king, a true monster of the highest caliber, a warrior and a leader reborn. The newly named Geld knelt once more, but this time it was a gesture of absolute, unyielding devotion. "My king," he rumbled, his voice now deep and clear. "I will serve you. My life, my strength, everything I am, is yours to command. I will not fail you." Rimuru accepted the pledge with a nod. He then turned his attention to the thousands of other orcs. "Rise, all of you," he commanded. "Your era of war and destruction is over. Your famine has ended. I will give you food and a home. In return, you will use your formidable strength to build our nation. Your purpose now is not to consume, but to create. You will be our builders, our farmers, our laborers. You will be the foundation upon which our new world is built." A collective murmur of awe and relief went through the orc ranks. They had expected death, or at best, a life of servitude. Instead, they were being given a second chance, a new purpose, and a king who had taken their sins upon himself. Rimuru, with CL's perfect analysis, then began the long, arduous process of naming them all. Not in a single, devastating burst as before, but in a carefully managed, efficient sequence that would grant them all a small but meaningful boost in power. After the orcs were all named and their new purpose was clear, the newly formed populace of the Jura Tempest Federation began the long journey from the orc-infested swamp back to the goblin village. The Mu-D was markedly different from the journey there. What was once a march to war was now a procession of allies returning home. The goblins, the ogres, and some of the lizard men moved alongside the humbled orcs, a strange but unified force. As they reached the familiar gates of the goblin village, a joyous cheer erupted. The goblins who had remained to guard the village rushed out to greet them, our faces a mix of relief and awe at the sight of the massive, disciplined army behind Rimuru. The ogre princess and the grizzled blacksmith, who had been anxiously awaiting their return, hurried to Rimuru's side. "Welcome back, my king," the ogre princess exclaimed, her eyes shining with relief. The blacksmith stood silently beside her, his powerful hands clenched with suppressed excitement. Rimuru, absorbing their warm greeting, felt a deep sense of satisfaction. With all of his key allies now present and accounted for, he turned his attention to the ogre companions who had fought by his side. "Ogres," he said, his voice softer but still resonating with power. "Your vengeance has been satisfied. I have cleansed your enemy. Now, I will give you a new purpose, a new path, and a new name." But before Rimuru could continue, The ogre princess stepped forward, her expression one of deep concern. "My king," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "I must protest. I have heard what happened to hobgoblins and lizardmen when you named them. The magical energy required to perform such a feat is immense, and you are not in your full strength from fighting the orcs. Please, do not do this. We would not have you harm yourself for us." Quote. Rimuru gave her a calm, reassuring wobble. "I appreciate your concern, but you need not worry," he said. "I may not look it, but I have grown far stronger since I last named a monster. In fact, on the battlefield, I already gave a name to a much more powerful being." He gestured toward the newly named Geld, who stood at the head of the orc ranks, a figure of stoic power. "That is the orc lord's son. He is now my first great commander, and his name is Geld. I assure you, naming you all is well within my power." Shuna's eyes widened in amazement as she looked at Geld, finally understanding the true extent of Rimuru's abilities. She bowed her head in respect. "Then please, my king, proceed. We are forever in your debt." Rimuru's gaze first settled on the ogre leader, a figure of immense power and dignity. "You," Rimuru announced, his voice carrying the full weight of a royal decree. "You will be my first commander," Rimuru announced. "You were the leader of your people. And you showed great strategic sense and courage even in the face of despair. I require that same ability, that same dignity, to lead my forces. You will be my first commander, my general. You will lead my military, training and disciplining all who swear loyalty. Your task is to turn our collective strength into a single, cohesive force. You will be the shield of our nation. From this day forward, your name is Benimaru." A brilliant flash of golden light, charged with a powerful, refined heat, enveloped the ogre leader. It was even more potent and carefully controlled than the one that had transformed Geld. His body pulsed, refining his immense frame. His bright crimson hair seemed to catch fire with the infusion of magicules, and his oni horn sharpened, becoming a symbol of wisdom and command. When the light subsided, a new being stood before them, a true ogre Kijin, his posture noble, his face commanding, and his aura that of an elite warrior general. The newly named Benimaru knelt with perfect, unhesitating grace. "My king," he rumbled, his voice now deep and resonant with authority. "I accept this honor. As your commander, I vow to forge a military that can repel any threat. I will not fail to be your shield." A brilliant flash of golden light enveloped the ogre leader, even more potent than the one that had transformed Geld. He emerged as an even more refined and powerful warrior. A true commander. "Grizzled swordsman," Rimuru continued, his attention shifting. "Your swordsmanship is a peerless art. You will be our chief instructor, teaching all of our warriors how to fight with skill and discipline. From this day forward, your name is Hikuro." A similar flash of light transformed the old swordsman, his wrinkles smoothing, his form becoming more agile and youthful while still retaining the wisdom in his eyes. Rimuru then turned to the dark-robed shadow ogre, his movements quick and purposeful. "And you," he said, "you will be my spymaster and chief scout. You will be the unseen eyes and ears of our kingdom, gathering information and moving in the shadows. From this day forward, your name is Soe." The shadow ogre's form grew more defined and his presence more subtle, his aura becoming that of a true master of stealth. Finally, Rimuru looked to the ogre princess. "You will be my chief steward and minister," he said. "You will oversee all of our domestic affairs, from crafting to diplomacy. From this day forward, your name is Shuna." A gentle, ethereal glow surrounded her, and she emerged with an air of profound grace and wisdom. "And you," Rimuru said, looking to the blacksmith, "you will be our master craftsman, forging the weapons and tools that will build and protect our nation. From this day forward, your name is Kurobi." The blacksmith was enveloped in a final flash of light, his physique growing even more powerful and his aura becoming that of a true artisan. Rimuru's attention then fell upon the final ogre standing among the group, the massive, powerfully built warrior who had fought with a terrifying, almost reckless ferocity on the battlefield. She was the one who had charged without hesitation, whose unbridled strength had been a whirlwind of destruction against the orcs. Her devotion was palpable, almost overwhelming. "And finally, you," Rimuru said, his voice imbued with a thoughtful gravity. "Your strength is immense, your loyalty absolute, but your temperament is a tempest. You will be my sworn protector, my personal guard. Your skill is already a formidable weapon, but you will need discipline and an unwavering will to refine that raw power." The warrior knelt immediately, her face tilted up to look at the small slime. Her eyes, filled with a zealous anticipation, were the only part of her massive frame that trembled. I live only to serve you, my king. Whatever name you bestow, whatever task you assign, I will fulfill it without question. Then heed your name, Rimuru declared, a controlled, massive surge of magicules focusing on her. You are strength personified, a force of nature that will stand between me and any threat. From this day forward, your name is Xian. The Ical light that enveloped her was the most intense of all the ogre transformations, burning with a fierce violet gold. Her already formidable physique grew even more statuesque, her purple hair transforming into a brilliant, flowing cascade. Her expression, while still fiercely loyal, gained a new layer of focused intensity. She emerged from the light as a majestic ogre Kijin, radiating raw, untamed power. Xian rose, her movements now possessing a dangerous, predatory grace. She dropped to one knee, her voice ringing out with an absolute, heart-stopping fervor that overshadowed all the previous pledges. My king, she thundered, her voice like a war drum. I am your shield and your blade. I swear an eternal oath I will allow no harm to ever come to you. If a speck of dust so much as touches your form, I will annihilate the entire world to avenge the slight. My life is yours. My purpose is you. Rimuru merely absorbed the intensity of her pledge with a serene wobble, a slight, almost imperceptible shake that acknowledged her devotion. I accept your pledge, Xian, he replied simply, his voice cutting through her passionate declaration. The sheer, overwhelming zeal of her devotion was slightly alarming. But her power would be indispensable. He knew he'd have to keep a close eye on her methods, but her loyalty was absolute. Each leader knelt, their hearts swelling with a new sense of pride and purpose. The lizard men were tasked with overseeing the new waterways and aquatic resources of the swamp. Rigurd and the goblins were put in charge of the agricultural efforts, teaching the orcs how to farm with the new, efficient methods Rimuru would show them. As the sun began to set, the first signs of the Jura Tempest Federation's future were already visible. The orcs, under Geld's direction, began moving massive stones and timber, their immense strength now a force for creation. The ogres and goblins, working side by side with their former enemies, began laying the groundwork for the first roads and buildings. All following the precise schematics Rimuru provided. Rimuru watched it all, a deep, abiding satisfaction settling within him. This was not just a nation, it was a living, breathing masterpiece. A world being built with perfect foresight and compassion. He knew that this grand act of creation would not go unnoticed. The news of a new monster nation, a king who could command ogres and orcs, would soon ripple through the great forest of Jura, reaching the ears of the demon lords and the western nations. The true challenge was yet to come, but the foundation of his perfect world had been laid. The sun rose on a village transformed. The celebrations of the previous night had left behind an atmosphere of quiet contentment, a stark contrast to the desperation that had once defined this place. As the morning mist clung to the trees, Rimuru gathered his newly named subordinates. Benimaru, Xian, Soe, Hakuro, Shuna, and Kurobe stood before him, their evil Ved forms radiating a new kind of power, not just physical might, but a sense of responsibility and purpose. Rimuru, floating at the head of the assembled group, mentally reviewed his plan. This was the moment where his new game plus advantage would truly shine. He wasn't just reacting to threats, he was proactively building a foundation. Thank you all for coming, Rimuru began, his voice calm and clear. The feast was a good start. But now, the real work begins. We are no longer just a village. We are a nation, and a nation needs structure. Each of you has a vital role to play. He turned to Benimaru first. Benimaru, you have the heart of a leader and the strategic mind of a commander. I name you the commander-in-chief of our armed forces. You will not only lead our armies but also oversee our defense and military strategy. Benimaru's expression was one of profound seriousness as he bowed his head. Next, Rimuru addressed the silent figure of Soe. Soe, your skills lie in stealth and information gathering. Your silence is a shield and a weapon. I name you our chief of intelligence. You will lead our intelligence and reconnaissance divisions, gathering information to keep our nation safe from unseen threats. Soe simply knelt, his eyes fixed on Rimuru, a silent vow of loyalty. Shuna, her elegance and intellect on full display, was next. Shuna, you will be our high priest and chief of research and development. Your skill with magic and your keen mind will be crucial in developing our technology, medicine, and magical abilities. You will be in charge of all non-military research. Shuna's face lit up with a brilliant smile, and she bowed deeply. Rimuru then looked at the solemn Hakuro. Hakuro, you are a master of the sword and a patient teacher. I name you our chief combat instructor. You will train not just our warriors, but everyone in our nation, ensuring that all our citizens have the skills to defend themselves." Hakuro nodded, a faint smile on his lips. Turning to Kurobe, the ever-stoic blacksmith, Rimuru said, "Kurobe, you will be the chief blacksmith. You will not just forge our weapons but also oversee the construction of our city's infrastructure and tools. We will build a nation with your creations." Kurobe's quiet nod was his promise. Finally, he addressed Xian. "Xian, your loyalty is unquestionable, and your strength is immense. You will be my personal secretary and bodyguard, my second in command, my right hand. I trust you to manage my affairs and protect me when I am most vulnerable." Xian, her eyes shining with tears, fell to her knees, overwhelmed with emotion. With the new roles established, Rimuru turned his attention to the wider populace. He gathered the orcs and lizardmen, their leaders at the front, and addressed them all. "We are now one. This is not just a place for goblins and direwolves. This is a place for everyone who seeks peace. You are all part of the Jura Tempest Federation. My name is Rimuru Tempest, and I am your king." The crowd erupted in a roar of cheers, the sound echoing through the forest. The foundation had been laid. The next chapter of their story was about to begin, not with a war, but with the clanging of hammers and the building of a new world. The days that followed the great naming ceremony were a whirlwind of construction and collaboration. The humble goblin village was rapidly transforming into something more. Under Kurobe's focused guidance, the immense strength of the orcs was put to use, clearing land and leveling the ground, their once hated bodies now a force for creation. In the newly designated kitchen, Shuna worked tirelessly, not just on daily meals, but on perfecting recipes and developing new culinary techniques, her magic enhancing the flavor and nutritional value of their food. The air was a symphony of creation, the rhythm of hammers, the scrape of stone, and the delicious aroma of a feast being prepared. From his vantage point, floating above the bustle, Rimuru absorbed it all. His inner monologue was a constant stream of assessment, a conversation with the ever-present consciousness of Seal. Analysis complete, Ciel's voice hummed in his mind. The current rate of construction is 17.3% more efficient than projected due to the orcs' cooperative nature and the lizardmen's hydrological expertise. Overall morale is high, and the nascent bonds between the different races are strengthening. Shuna's culinary contributions are also boosting morale and energy reserves. Good, Seal, Rimuru thought, a pleased ripple passing through his gelatinous body. The foundation is more than just stone and wood. It's built on trust and a full stomach. It was at that moment that a new group appeared on the horizon. A column of lizardmen, their scales a vibrant green under the morning sun, approached the village. Rimuru's perception skills identified their leader immediately, the chieftain and his son, Gabiru. The way they marched, not in a battle formation, but with a formal and respectful bearing, signaled a diplomatic visit. Benimaru and Hakuro met them at the edge of the clearing, their new forms radiating an aura of confident authority. Benimaru's hand rested on the hilt of his katana, a silent message that while they were welcome, this was no longer a place to be taken lightly. Upon seeing Rimuru, Gabiru's previous arrogance was entirely gone, replaced with an almost nervous reverence. He immediately dropped to one knee, a gesture of deference that stunned his own troops. "Great Rimuru-sama," Gabiru's voice was a humbled, low rumble, devoid of its usual boastfulness. "My father, the chieftain, and I have come to formally pledge our fealty. We have witnessed your power and your compassion. My people wish to become a part of your glorious nation." Rimuru descended gently, hovering just above eye level with Gabiru. A moment of truth, he thought. This is an opportunity to not only secure a valuable alliance but to show them the depth of my commitment. He could simply accept their fealty, but that was what a typical demon lord would do. A true leader would share their power. Seal, calculate the magical cost for naming Gabiru and the chieftain, and assess the potential benefits. Calculation complete. The cost would be approximately 2.1% of your total magical reserves, including Gabiru's followers and his sister. The benefit: a significant increase in their overall power, a permanent bond of loyalty, and the strengthening of a key strategic alliance. Recommendation: proceed with naming. Rimuru accepted the verdict. He looked down at the chieftain, who was bowing his head in silent respect. "Chieftain," Rimuru said, his voice echoing with a surprising weight, "you are no longer a chieftain of a single tribe, but a foundation of a new nation. From this day forward, I name you Gabiru." The chieftain's body was immediately enveloped in a soft, white glow. His scales shifted, hardening and becoming more resilient. His body grew slightly taller. And the crest on his head became more defined, a crown of bones signifying his new status as the elder statesman of his people. Then, Rimuru's gaze fell upon a female lizardman who stood proudly beside Gabiru. She had a calm, intelligent demeanor, and her eyes held a similar reverence to her brothers. And you, Gabiru's sister. Your wisdom and skill will be a great asset. I name you Soka. A soft, radiant glow enveloped her. Her body became more lithe, her features more refined, and a pair of delicate, translucent wings formed on her back, signifying a rapid evolution. Soka's eyes widened in silent awe, and a gasp of surprise escaped her lips. And now, you, Rimuru said, his gaze sweeping over the small group of elite lizardmen who had followed Gabiru so loyally. Your bravery and dedication are worthy of a purpose greater than your own. I name you all the Gabiru's Guard, a special unit dedicated to upholding peace in the marshlands and safeguarding our nation. As he spoke, a flash of light enveloped each of them, and their bodies began to change, their scales hardening and their forms becoming more powerful. Rimuru then turned to Gabiru, who had watched the entire process with a mix of shock and profound awe. He was no longer just a leader, he was a leader of an evolved and powerful force. And Gabiru, Rimuru continued, turning his gaze to the kneeling lizard man. You have shown your humility and your dedication to your people. You are no longer merely Gabiru, son of the chieftain. I name you Gabiru, and I task you with a purpose far greater than your own. You will be the commander of the lizardmen forces, responsible for the defense of the riverways and the marshlands. But beyond that, you will be the chief of our water resources division. You will oversee the construction of canals, bridges, and all water-based infrastructure, ensuring our city has a constant, reliable source of water and a means of travel. The effect was instantaneous and profound. A dazzling light erupted from Gabiru, brighter than the one that had consumed his father. His body underwent a rapid and magnificent transformation. His scales took on a jade-like luster, his limbs elongated. And two small, nascent wings unfurled from his back. He stood up not as a lizard man, but as a Dragonute, an evolved and powerful race. The change in his aura was palpable, radiating a strength and confidence that was truly earned. Gabiru, stunned speechless, felt a power surge through his veins unlike anything he had ever known. His mind, once clouded by pride, was now clear, and the responsibility of his new purpose settled upon him. He looked at his new form, then at the chieftain, and finally at Rimuru, his eyes welling up with emotion. Rimuru-sama, I am unworthy of this honor. But I will live to prove myself worthy. There is no need for such thoughts, Rimuru replied calmly. Your loyalty is your worth. Now, rise, Gabiru. You and your father will lead your people. But you will also become the guardians of our riverways and the chief architects of our water-based infrastructure. We will build a path connecting our peoples, and you will ensure its safety and efficiency. The surrounding lizardmen, witnessing the miraculous transformation of their leaders, fell to their knees in unison. The sounds of construction now had a new harmony, a symphony of a shared future. Built on the foundations of mutual respect and a leader's willingness to share his power. The first diplomatic meeting was a resounding success, not just for its pledges of fealty, but for the profound and visible change it brought to the allies of the Jura Tempest Federation. The lizardmen, with their innate understanding of water and earth, were invaluable in channeling the NEA-RBY River and preparing the soil for future agriculture. The weeks that followed the diplomatic visit from the lizardmen were a period of focused, almost feverish, activity. The Jura Tempest Federation was no longer a theoretical nation. It was a living, breathing entity. The lizardmen, now led by the newly evolved Gabiru and Soka, had integrated seamlessly into the workforce. Their innate tie for water and marshlands made them invaluable for the construction of canals and a sophisticated irrigation system. Soka, with her newfound intelligence and sharp strategic mind, quickly became an indispensable assistant to Soe in planning the city's defenses. Rimuru, however, found himself with a different kind of task. With the city's foundation being built on a grand scale, the demand for metal, particularly high-quality steel for advanced tools and weaponry, was immense. The crude iron ore found in the great forest of Jura simply wouldn't suffice for his long-term plans. The logical next step, the one he had been mentally preparing for since his rebirth, was a diplomatic mission to the armed nation of Dwargan, the kingdom of the dwarves. He called his inner circle to a meeting. Benimaru, Shion, Soe, Hakuro, Shuna, and Kurobe gathered in what would soon become a grand hall, but for now was a large, open tent. The city is coming along wonderfully, Rimuru began, his voice taking on a more serious tone. But our resources are limited. We need better materials and more advanced technology to truly build the kind of nation I envision. For that, we need the dwarves. A quiet hum of discussion spread through the group. The dwarves were known for their isolation and their fierce pride. Negotiating with them would not be easy. I will go to Dworgen, Rimuru announced. I'll take a small team with me. Soe, you will accompany me as our primary intelligence officer. Ranga, I want you to come as well, for both a show of force and because your speed will be invaluable. Gabuta, you will come as an attendant and for additional support. Benimaru, his hand still on his katana, stepped forward slightly. What of us, Rimuru-sama? Should we not accompany you? He asked, his voice filled with concern. Rimuru's gaze swept over the silent group, a small, knowing ripple passing through his body. No, he replied, his tone firm. My safety is not a concern. The purpose of this group is strategic, not defensive. We will open the path to the outside world, not just for ourselves, but for all of you. Benimaru's face tightened, but he didn't press the issue. The others, too, looked worried. They hadn't seen the true extent of Rimuru's power, only the fragments he had chosen to reveal. To them, he was a powerful leader, but not an indestructible one. A bit overprotective, aren't they? Rimuru thought to himself, a tiny, amused ripple in his consciousness. It's a testament to their loyalty, but also an indication that they don't quite grasp the level I'm operating on. That's fine, it's better they see me as their leader and friend, not an unapproachable god. Correction, Master, CL's voice resonated clearly in his mind. Your power has been limited to that of a true dragon. While your existence is beyond any threat on this continent, your current form could be damaged by certain ultimate skills. For the sake of appearances, a small group is optimal. You worry too much, Seal, Rimuru mused. A mental sigh escaping him. I know, I'm not here to prove my strength. I'm here to build a nation, and that requires trust. And trust means letting them take on responsibility. The city is your responsibility. Rimuru reiterated, his tone softening slightly. Benimaru, you are in command of all military operations. Soka will be your second, assisting you with defense planning. Hakuro, continue to train our warriors. Kurobe, keep building. And don't worry, I won't be gone long. All of them nodded, their reluctance still visible, but their trust in him winning out over their fears. The journey to the armed nation of Dworgen would be a test of trust and foresight. Rimuru was not just securing resources, he was opening a new diplomatic channel, a direct line to a major power that would recognize his kingdom. It was a risk, but it was a necessary one for the future he was building. With the foundation of his nation in place, it was time to step onto the world stage. The journey to the armed nation of Dworgen began at a swift and purposeful pace. Rimuru, in his slime form, rode atop Ranga's back, a comfortable and surprisingly fast mode of travel. Soe moved with silent grace, a shadow flitting through the dense forest, always a few paces ahead, while the ever-eager Gabuta rode his own direwolf, his energy seemingly limitless. The path they took was on. That Soe's intelligence network had meticulously mapped out, avoiding major monster territories and the more treacherous parts of the great forest of Jura. This feels good, Rimuru mused to himself. The rush of wind against his body a refreshing change from the static work of city planning. It's a lot like a high-level party exploring a new dungeon. Gabuta is the enthusiastic beginner, Ranga is the overpowered mount, and Soe is the perfect scout. And me, I'm the ultimate tank and DPS, just in case. He chuckled internally at the thought. The concept of danger was a foreign one to him now, a relic of a life long since past. Master, a scouting report has been filed. CL's voice was as calm and precise as always. A small group of goblins have been detected 2 kilometers ahead, accompanied by a single hobgoblin. They appear to be travelers. No signs of hostile intent. Don't engage, Soe, Rimuru mentally commanded, transmitting the information. Just avoid them. We're on a diplomatic mission, not a monster-slaying tour. Understood, Rimuru-sama. Soe's voice was a low hum in his mind. Like a wisp of smoke, his presence vanished, a testament to his incredible stealth. As they moved, Rimuru reflected on the New Game Plus reality of his existence. He wasn't just building a kingdom, he was building a world. He had already bypassed countless conflicts and power struggles from his past life. Simply by being too powerful and too prepared. He had no need for a long, drawn-out grind to level up. He was already at the top. The only real challenge now was not in combat, but in Navi. gating the complex web of politics and diplomacy of this world. It's a delicate balance, he thought. Show too much power, and they'll see me as a threat. Show too little, and they'll see me as a pushover. I need to be a force they respect and fear just enough to not attack, but not so much that they see me as a threat to their entire existence. After 2 days of travel, the forest began to thin, and the air grew colder. The scent of soot and forge fires, distinct and strong, filled the air. They were approaching their destination. High above them, carved into the side of an immense mountain, were the grand, imposing gates of the armed nation of Dworgen. The kingdom was a fortress, a testament to the dwarves' pride in their mastery of stonework. "We're here, Rimuru-sama," Gabuta said, his face alight with excitement. "Yes," Rimuru replied, his tone thoughtful. "This is where the real work begins." The journey to the armed nation of Dworgen was a strategic move, a calculated risk. While the Dwarven kingdom was known to tolerate monster traders, establishing a formal, nation-to-nation relationship was a different matter entirely. The risk was not to Rimuru's personal safety but to the future of his new nation. A failed diplomatic mission could result in the monsters of the Jura forest being seen as a threat to humanity, leading to a political and economic embargo driven by fear and misinformation. By revealing the existence of a powerful, organized monster nation, Rimuru was playing a dangerous game for international recognition and stable trade agreements. It was a gamble for a place on the world stage. And it was a necessary one. The path to the outside world lay before them, and Rimuru was ready to walk it. The end.